Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Well, it's actually fairly warm April evening. It's technically the morning of the 13th. Today, we're going to do an episode which I hate to say the title just in case I want to change it, but the current title in my mind is Controlling the Vessel. So I'm going to hit you with an idea that I think that people would reject initially. But perhaps if you give it just a little bit of thought, you will have to concede that as much as we want to say, oh, I totally control my life, I control, everything I think I totally control, everything I feel I totally control. When I want to be awake, I'm just awake. When I want to be tired, I just get tired. You just totally control everything. And the obvious answer is we don't. We don't actually control this vessel at all. We control a little bit. And the way I always look at these situations is, one, I'm going to talk to a bunch of you at different ages. And so depending on how old you are, you will have more and more control until perhaps your vessel starts to age. And maybe, depending on your age, it does be probably pretty old, we then lose control. We all lose control after a while, right? Depends, But I'm not really talking about the physical, although there's an element to it. But what always gets me about these subjects is that we don't acknowledge these kind of things. We don't really conversate about these things. And I think for a large group of us, we don't conceive of these sorts of things. Well, you're just human, and isn't, life's a bitch and then you die. Those kind of statements, and those statements for me mean it's you don't have total control. If you did have total control over your vessel, then you would be the smartest person in the world. You'd be the most productive person in the world. You would never be angry, probably, because you would be in total control and they would be in total control. Ill-gotten gains, well, that would be only a parlor trick to create a little bit of tension and excitement and drama on purpose. Because a lot of that stuff, people taking advantage of you, it's usually someone who's greedy, but they're also lazy. Lazy feeds greedy. Why should I work really hard when I can steal it from somebody else? That kind of thing. But now imagine it's 1,000 years from now, and these sorts of things have been well understood. And now we raise our children, let's just say, with a lot more data about what it's like to be a human being. All the stuff I've ever talked about on the show, which I say, look, there's no owner's manual to life. There's no manual on how to do anything. All right. Well, I'm hoping that in several hundred years from now, the conversations on Deep Thoughts will seem like almost ridiculous thoughts. Like absurdly obvious thoughts, right? But just in case, this is something that's interesting to you, because I think that there are so many things that we do to try and gain control of our lives in terms of controlling our insides. For any of you who've ever been angry, and then after you were angry, you were like embarrassed that you lost control. That's one of those moments. Anytime that you acted impulsively, could be an anger thing, could be a blissful thing, but you regretted it. You got crazy pregnant. It's another one. If you could just control yourself, a lot of those things wouldn't happen. Your life could be very strategic. It could be like playing a video game. I'm going to make my character have red hair and and I'm going to work out and get, totally thin, and I'm going to make really healthy. I'm going to do all my sit-ups and push-ups and eat healthy food. Lack of control. For those of you who are religious, it's very, very important to understand how out of control we are with our vessel. What's the story of Adam and Eve? You're put in a perfect place called the Garden of Eden. And a lot of this is just a metaphor for everything else in life. So there's a lot, even if you're not religious, this has value. God, by any definition, being a perfect being, comes down to Adam and Eve and says, welcome to the garden. First he creates Adam, and then Adam gets bored, and then, he creates Eve. And that's why there's a rib count difference, right? But he says there's one rule. Don't eat the apple from the apple tree. Apparently there was only one apple tree, which must have made it so much more curious, right? I mean, you could eat everything in the whole place, figs and pears and peaches and strawberries and whatever, but you can't eat that apple. I mean, seriously, if you had never eaten an apple before and you looked at it, oh my God, wouldn't that look delicious? Big old shiny red thing. I mean, I'm assuming the ones in the Garden of Eden would have been really polished up nice, right? One of the reasons why the Garden of Eden to me always made no sense was that man was created with choice. Man was not perfect like God. Man, therefore, would have some level of frailty and flawed nature. But the other thing is that we're also not regimented soldiers. In the Garden of Eden, we are allowed to do anything that we want. Make your choices, man. Well, what I like to do with the story of Garden of Eden is to get you to look at that story on the left. And then I want to show you a Minnesota Fats pool shot on the right. There's just one ball, the cue ball. And you are to hit that cue ball. And it's a special table made by God. It's in the Garden of Eden. And you're going to hit the ball just with the lightest touch. And no matter what velocity you give the ball, it's going to maintain that speed, that velocity, the entire time, forever. And the game is, can you get the ball to go infinitely around the table without going into one of the 6 pockets? Ask anyone in pool. You probably can't do it. Honestly, you probably can't do it. The felt's going to change things. Hitting the side of the pool table wall is going to create a spin. It's going to change its trajectory. And then all of a sudden, doink, it goes in a pocket. Maybe you can get it to go 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, but it's eventually going to go into a pocket. Okay, well, the pool table is the Garden of Eden, and the ball is a human being that's always going to change course. The human is flawed. No matter how many days Adam and Eve woke up and didn't eat the apple, God would know, as a creator, that eventually, unless you're perfect, you were going to eat the apple. It's the ball's going to go into the pocket. That is the quintessential genesis of this concept. We have been blessed with not being perfect. At the same time, we have been cursed with not being perfect. But having this overlay of a religion, and even just straight up human programming religion, which is do no harm. And so you have this thing of never do any harm to anyone, and especially don't break any of these rules. There's the 10 Commandments, but there's a ton of rules. Forget human rules. At some point you're going to be tired. Something's going to happen. Maybe your kid just gets on your nerves, and you know that they have a lot more energy than you do. And for that particular night, you try to honey, I need you to calm down, or, I'm really tired. And most of the time they do leave you alone, but sometimes they just keep going and keep going. Maybe they're angry too. Maybe they're crying and you're crying inside, And then maybe you flip out. You flip out on a spouse, a partner, a friend. You didn't mean to. You were just flawed that particular day more so than ever because of the elements. There's the old saying in was Alcoholic Anonymous, you can't fix a problem unless you acknowledge you have it. So this topic appeals to me because I would say that I have lived the majority of my life not being conscious of the fact that you just don't control everything perfectly. And I will tell you up until the point, I would say that as soon as I gained sort of an intellectual mind, who knows when that happened, to the point I realized that there was a factor here. And what's interesting is I realized the Adam and Eve thing, I don't know, at least a decade ago, but still had so much hubris inside myself, I didn't apply the algorithm to myself in any long-term analysis of human behavior. meaning I realized I am flawed, therefore I have choice. I can pick the wrong thing if I want to. I can be a jerk if I want to. And then just say, oh, but I don't. I'm totally always doing the right thing. No matter how clean your record is, unless you're Mr. Rogers, you probably got some faux pas in your life, right? And that's okay. And that's the other thing we have to realize is we're all trying here. In the last probably decade, due to the internet, we're having a lot of good wisdom travel in posts, travel in memes, maybe even just general conversation with people. But I will say that another thing that's sort of indicative of this acknowledgement, which improves our lives, is to remember, and some people are so good at this. I am not terribly good at this. I'm trying to get much better at this. But it goes something like this. If you were to, there's a bunch of videos online of people just losing their minds. Now, some of them are high on methamphetamines or something else. Used to be crack back in the days. It's usually meth today. It just makes you crazy. You take all your clothes off, you run around the neighborhood. Not quite talking about that. But there will be people that have just had it up to here, and they go into public and someone steps on their toes in some fashion, form or fashion, metaphorically, of course, and they just pop. And they're just, it could be a racial thing. Someone feels like they've been, discriminated against for years up to the point they blow up. It's like that Falling Down movie with Kirk Douglas. He just had enough, man. He went to McDonald's and he just wanted breakfast. And he's just slipped past it by a few minutes, and so he just went nuts. But some people have been saying, hey, I don't get mad at people because I don't know what kind of day they've had. And that's very, very real, isn't it? Don't know what kind of day someone else had, so I'm going to be a little more chill. Sometimes it turns into people driving fast on the highway. Hell, if some guy's got a kid in the back who's dying of something, choked on something, has had a heart attack, has gone into seizures. You have no idea. And here they are hauling ass on the highway. You think they're a maniac, but they're just going to the hospital as quickly as possible. And they don't care about anybody else. Just they're driving on the shoulder. They don't care. It's their kid's life, their spouse's life. And so we could see that, not understand the context of what was going on, and then I'm going to chase that person down and do road rage, and they're trying to save their family member's life, right? Sadly, there's young men in their first 10 years of driving do it to have fun, and those are the ones we typically get less patient with, right? But I think that I definitely have had conversations, and again, I'm as guilty as anyone, but I kind of kept it to myself. But, there's some folks out there that if you talk about the frailties of mankind that we all share, oh, I don't have that, and hear this totally defense mechanism. Okay. Maybe a Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, someone who's just made it happen their whole life. Yeah, maybe. Put anyone else in there that you admire, you might just go, yeah, they could just fall down and they'd end up standing up. It'd be unbelievable. But for the most of us, there's this lack of control. Now, the other thing is, if you're going to address it within yourself, first, try to let the whole concept sink in. Because we're afraid of not being in control, right? We're afraid. If we're to look inside ourselves and find a flaw, oh my God. It's like, looking at your bank account balance when you're not sure you have any money. You can develop a massive phobia. I've had this several times in my lifetimes when I was young, even a few times when I was older. I don't want to log into my bank. I just hope this card keeps working, So we look inside. And it doesn't have to be a full inventory in one day either. This could be something that you just make a fun game out of. It's between you and yourself, so you don't have to tell anybody that you're doing this. Now, it could be, because this is the way it works, I think, in most of us, we will have areas of our life where we have tremendous control. and other areas where we just suck. It's just so strange. You could be like, the amount of guys that I have met where professionally, unbelievable. Professionally, they just kick butt everywhere they go. And then it comes to gaining a partner, attracting a woman, or whatever turns them on, they choke up. Because in their mind, they don't have the capability to do it, or whatever the reason is. And they know that if they could just muster the control at the nightclub, at some public gathering, to walk right over there and say, hey, I don't mean to be a creeper, but I just noticed you over there. Just curious. And you start the conversation. As I always tell you folks, for those of you who've listened to a ton of episodes, I divide life into 3 categories because this is why. Here we are talking about a brand new topic. Never talked about it before that I know of. Now, it's implied with all self-improvement episodes that we're trying to gain more control over our lives. This is specifically starting at the Freudian id, right? But you have the self, the family, actually self, work, and family, because that's usually how it happens, right? You are born, you live a certain number of years, you finally end your school cycle, and you go out and get a job. Once you get the job, either very soon after that or within a decade or 2, you will find a partner most likely, and you'll figure out how to maintain that partnership, and you move in together and you have a partner for the rest of your life. Hopefully. So when we talk about the categories of control, I'm going to tell you that there are a ton of them, obviously, in the self. And I haven't talked about this in a long time, so let me just repeat. I absolutely adore the way that Freud broke down the human mind. Whether or not it's real or not, I think, for me, it makes complete sense. His 3 chambers of the mind, which is, in my definition, for those of you who are spiritual, your soul and your body work together to create an instance of a mind. This is a very well-oiled theory from, Indian gurus. But you have the id. The id is the inner core of your being that is sort of a complete mystery. It is sort of like a furnace of fire that is like a fire of plasma. It's just like one of those little lightning balls, just constantly moves around. And it's sort of that everything is in there. It is the proxy to the universe, in my opinion. And imagine looking into like a crystal ball that's sitting on your table. And inside that crystal ball is all knowledge, all at once. And then your participation in this particular instance in the universe at this particular space-time. I mean, time is an illusion, but we are definitely here together at this time. And at a future time, we won't be together. Before this show ever existed, we weren't together. See how that works? But over that is your hard shell, if you will. And that's your character. That is who you truly are. Before anyone makes you feel like you need to behave a different way, it is exactly the raw person that you are. This is typically how you behave by yourself when no one's looking. Now, some people don't have any connection with their character, and it's a very interesting thing. It's kind of rare. But those, what was it, the movie Office Space, where that woman was constantly answering the phone, corporate accounting, how can I help you? Corporate accounting, how may I direct your call? Corporate accounting, it's like those kind of people, or the principal's assistant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that woman who plays that character is so brilliant, plays this massively, fake persona character, which is your third layer. Your third layer is the character that you play when you're with other people. And what they don't tell you, at least it's been a long time since I read his original work, but you have multiple personas, tons of different personas. They're just ever so slight. It's sort of like having multiple personalities, but they all go by the same name and they all know each other and they're all the same age. So you're kind of switching in and out of your different personalities. And I'll give you some examples. You talk to your best bud, your BFF or your best bud. You have one more loose, most likely character. You're willing to swear a little bit. You want to talk about kind of things that we don't talk about in public, because that's why you'll have a best friend. So you can say all those things. It's like psychological therapy. And then you talk to an 80-year-old person at a resting home who's, depending on how old you are, they could be 6 generations away from you. If you're 20 years old and they're 80, there's 6 decades between the two of you. You're on best behavior. You don't swear. And usually, without even trying, we're trying to live in the time frame that they came from. And so, if you ever watch old movies, you'll find out we were totally different human beings back in the 30s, back in the 40s, back in the 50s. Sadly, we have become more dishonest, more manipulative, and more greedy today than ever. And then you go talk to a child, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, who's fragile, who needs guidance, who is either very recluse 4-year-old, or they're a really bold little 4-year-old, whatever it is. There's different ways to talk to kids. And so you have these different personas. You go to work, you talk to your boss. You go to work and talk to your employees, the ones that report to you. It's a whole different game, right? Now, there's a classic thing they talk about in life, which is sometimes you see yourself in other people. And this happens tremendously when you have children. And, the last thing a kid wants to actually acknowledge is that they're just like you. For some reason, there's just no honor in being like your parents. What a sad world we've created here, right? And so, like my kid, it's so funny. She's literally becoming me slowly over time. The things that she's excited about, how she forms a conversation, how she likes to spend her personal time. She's totally me in a female body. But if I ever said, yeah, you're just like me, oh my God, she'd barf in her mouth. It's just hilarious, right? But we see ourselves in other people. Let's say you're a successfully recovering drug addict or alcoholic, same thing. And now you bump into someone who's fresh in the game. They're deep in the game, and you can just see it. You know all the triggers, all of the signs that let you know that the person's having an issue. And what's interesting about it is we're usually fairly excited about helping another person, depending on what kind of person they are. If they're violent and dangerous, you're just going to be like, okay, see you later. Hope you work it out. But sometimes people come to you for help, whether they're actively going, dude, I need your help, or they're just coming going, oh my God, life sucks. I want to kill myself. And you're like, okay, well, sit down. Here, what cigar do you want? Here you go. Boom, let's light up. Let's talk about this. By the way, that happens in lounges every once in a while. I've had it on multiple occasions where multiple individuals will come in and I'm already done smoking a cigar, and I'm like within minutes of leaving the lounge, and they will go buy me a cigar, like a really expensive one, like $20 cigar or something like that, or more. And they'll just, here, I need you to talk. I needed someone to talk to. And then you're like, okay, all right. And I want someone there for me when that happens to me. So yeah, you're right. Boom. And you call people over, I'll be like an hour too late, So it's easy for us to see what I'm talking about in other people. It's not so easy sometimes to go inside yourself. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, you hear me propose this concept and you're like, yeah, you're right. There's that thing. And how do we develop a science around identifying the individual issues that each of us have? Because they're all different. Again, you could have total control on something that I am absolutely atrocious at, and vice versa. I'll give you a really silly one to start off with. The way I keep my house clean is to have a complete cycle of how I live in my house. And for anyone who lives with me, it's all ubiquitous. They don't even see it. I just put my toothbrush there, and I pick it up and use it, and I put it there, and I clean it up, put it there, right? If I'm going to cook, it's just like this thing. If I'm going to sit in the front, bring my food in the front. I got just little rules, So, but, say 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I'd make a mess and then I'd leave it there. And then I'd come back and go, well, it's my house. I live by myself or whatever. I'm the king of my own frontier or whatever it is. And I will come back and I'll get it cleaned up. Don't worry about it. I always take care of things, right? And then eventually you find out, there's a better way to do it. Now, I'll go to some of my friends' houses and one of my best buds, go to his place. He's owned different homes at different times. I first met him, he had a really big townhouse, but he just cleans constantly as we're talking. We're just, he makes us a couple Manhattans and we're just talking and chilling, catching up. And he's just kind of going in a big circle. He gets his sponge out and he's wiping something. He wipes stuff down that I don't even think is dirty. And he gets his towel out and dries out the sink, and it's just, everything's immaculate constantly because he's just like a little Hoover constantly cleaning up stuff. But when you go inside yourself, this can be very daunting, and it can be actually a little alarming to sort of find out how much you don't really control. Because our instinct, again, is never to admit such a thing. In some cases, it would be like, you're completely out of control. Like I just finished today. We started and finished the Tiger King thing on Netflix because it just keeps going around, and we're sitting at the lounge and the dude who owns the place just went and took a nap for a couple hours. And so we've got the first several episodes out. Then he came in, he didn't want to watch it. So he left. We just roared through the whole thing, finished it, start to finish. Well, that dude, Joe, obviously had some massive hubris and literally had a control problem. He's in jail partially because he couldn't control his anger towards this woman in Florida, Carol, that he just couldn't stand. And, there's things about her that I think everybody dislikes, but the thing is very biased in a bunch of different directions. So I'd say be careful about passing judgment in any direction at all, but you can see it in him. Pick that guy apart. And then you come back to yourself and you're like, man, I'm doing so much better. And then you sleep really well at night. So let's try to dive into some of these layers of personality and traits. Because it should go without saying that if you don't have control of your own life, and I don't mean employment, things that are circumstantial around you, you don't need to blame yourself for being unemployed necessarily because times can get hard, or some other thing around you that's affecting your life on the outside. We're talking about purely things that if you were in a room by yourself, you're in a beautiful, let's do it this way. You're in a beautiful bungalow off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii, and all your bills are paid. It's all great. You have nothing to worry. You just won the lottery for all intents and purposes. Got some time to yourself. Got the place rented for 4 weeks. You're just going to sit and be with yourself. I think the number one thing I'm going to throw at you, because this could go anyway. There's no right or wrong way, of course, right? I don't want to try to introduce by inference rules that this system has to go by because, we're all trying our best, right? Part of it is to find out who you are as a person. Because the interesting thing that we were gifted to by our Creator was our own desires, our own vector of what you want to do. This isn't going to all be about some career thing, so don't worry, but you have desires as to who you're going to be in a room by yourself outside of any money earning situation. Then you're going to have, depending on what you want to experience in life, a set of traits and skills and attributes that you're going to need to have in your character, right? That, 100% you are who you are. Now, again, some people have very thin personas. They don't really believe in personas. They're just who they are constantly, right? But we all do have a little bit of persona. But we'll stick to the character for now. You have desires of who you want to be as a human being, whether or not you know it or not. And let me give you some words to describe it, some adjectives, right? You're going to be a good person. You're going to be a neutral person. You're going to be a conniving evil person. You have to make those decisions as to what kind of person you are. And what's really funny is when you make a character in Dungeons and Dragons, there's this alignment table that you have to pick. There's lawful good, and there's like, I forgot what it's called about, unlawful bad. But there's like, I think 9 things you can choose in the square. So neutral's right in the very center. You can swing this thing around, and that tells you, as you portray this fake character in this game, this is how you should play your character. Okay, well, just bring it back to yourself. Are you a good person? Is that something that's important to you? Or are you Shane and you're like, man, the world's, totally out of control. I'm just going to take care of myself and screw everybody else. As long as you don't hurt anyone else, that might not be any violation of existence. So first is to desire who you would like to be as you perceive yourself. Forget other people. It does factor into how others perceive you as well, typically, but some of you don't care and you still have to make the decision. Who do you want to be? The second tier up would be, what themes in life do you want to experience based on your choice of who you are? So if you're good, well, how do you want to do that? Do you want to be good because you're an inventor? You're a hermit, but you invent medicines and inventions and you put them in the public domain, or maybe you sell them for a reasonable price. Maybe that's your game. You're a product-based person. Some of you will be a service-based person. You want to go help people. You want to become a doctor or a nurse or a volunteer, firefighter, whatever. So the theme that you're interested in is helping other people through direct participation. So the other one is helping people through indirect participation. In my experience, I don't know that anyone chooses to be bad. I think choosing, or I should say ending up being a bad person, is typically the result of being abused. In my earlier years as a professional, I made friends in California. And I had 2 very, very different friends. Sort of a yin and a yang pairing. They were best friends as well. So it was the 3 of us. One of them was lawful good. And one was sort of, I would say, maybe neutral, unlawful. Wasn't trying to be bad. One of them that was lawful good, he grew up in a beautiful household, good family. I mean, good family. Dad was super successful. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. His siblings were all fantastic people. But the other kid had a mom that got strung out on drugs and I think became a prostitute at one point. He was unable to finish high school initially because he had to come home to support his siblings while mom was all jacked up. And he learned the hard way, of no fault of his own. This is the way life is. And I've got to make sacrifices to get what I need. And because he had to enter life way before his time, meaning before he really graduated from high school and stuff. And he did graduate, but I'm not sure how he did it. He ended up being sort of a cheater. Definitely a cheater on women for a whole different reason. But he would always, he was super duper lazy. He's probably a completely different human being today. In fact, I think he's successfully married now for quite a number of years now. So I'm very happy for him. But when I knew him, he was the most charming guy in the world. Super duper smart. Super duper smart. And if he didn't know something, he could go off and learn it. It was that kind of thing. But he was bored with life almost 24/7. And he had just learned the template of life in a very chaotic manner. And so he was very chaotic to deal with as a person, because that's the world he grew up in. And so his lack of control was all based on the fact that he was never in a controlled environment to set the template inside of him, right? As he's forming the circuits in his mind to figure out who he was as a person. That just wasn't there. My other buddy lived in a completely rule-based world, and you could rely on him usually 100%. For any percentage that you didn't have, it was just natural causes, right? So I came in being both of them, other than I didn't have a mom hooked on crack, but I stopped living with my mom, I think, at 10 years old. But, you got flawed parents, you got a flawed world. I moved, 7 different schools before I graduated, so I had to deal with all the chaos around me. But now here's the thing. I wanted to be lawful good. I wanted to help people however I could. And I was just a sponge for knowledge. So for me, I was like, learning things was just tantamount to sex, I liked both of them a lot, right? So when I got to these guys, I was like, wow, I've been through kind of both roads, but I always personally steered towards the best of the best. If I play a video game, for instance, just to give you a profile on me personally, there's games like Fallout 4 and the Fallout franchise, I should say. And you're always given the chance to be a complete bastard in the game if you want to. Tons of games have this kind of, pick how you're going to behave. The bummer is that the games don't seem to learn who you are over time. So they keep the door open at all times. You could just kill somebody. It's just, you're not supposed to kill. Being a game designer, I know that once you start doing that, the games start shutting down a lot of options that you'll never experience. Always go good because that keeps everything open 24/7. But as I lived my life, it was always trying to, okay, well, that sucks. Well, I'm going to fix it. I'll fix it for me. I can't fix it for anybody else. I'm only a kid. Boom, boom, boom. So you have to figure out who you are as a person in terms of good or bad or neutral. There's really nothing wrong with neutral. I just think that there are peaks that you will never experience if you don't pick one of the other, good or bad. Bad's going to be a Faust relationship where you're going to sign a contract with the devil and you're going to have perhaps some giant peaks like a drug dealer or someone else cheating to get something, ill-gotten gains. And then most cases you lose respect for yourself. I'll just give you my own personal experience seeing people do this. They lose respect for themselves. They lose all their friends and they lose all their money. Typically goes like that. And so they live very short lives. Some people survive and are reborn, but that's not as common as I'd like it to be. If you strive to be good, then really the world is your oyster, I always hate that analogy because I don't eat oysters, but next one up is, again, your themes. Now, once you know who you are as a person, who you want to be, at least your target, then you find your themes of what you want to do. Then you can start moving up into the first sector of outside of yourself, which is your work choices. Okay, based on who you are, what kind of jobs allow you to be who you want to be as a person and then experience the themes that you want to experience in life? Because all of this is going to lay the roadmap for our control model of looking inside that id pool and going, Jesus, there is a lot I don't really control that I'd love to control. And then we can work towards it, right? The more you get yourself situated and you get your work aligned with yourself, and just remember, you can try something and it doesn't work. It doesn't satisfy those first two directives. And you just change work, especially when you're young. Go through it, go crazy, because you have the cheapest cost of living that you're ever going to have when you're young. And so you want to do everything nuts when you're young. Hey man, if you end up living out of your car, you can do that when you're 18, 19, 20. It's a lot harder when you're 30, 40, 50. You start looking like the guy that the cops need to take into the hole to dry out, right? When you finally click with some industry, whether you be self-employed or working for someone else, whether it be a service-based lifestyle or a product you're selling or making, then you start to incur your first harmonic. the harmony between the work module of your life, the work stage of your life, the work hemisphere of your life, and the inner core of who you are. And life starts to feel pretty good. Starts to feel pretty cool. And what that starts to do is it starts to make you incredibly attractive to other people. Not only your same sex, well, I should say, the opposite sex of that of which you are attracted to, right? So the side that you're not going to marry, right? It makes you attractive to that, and it makes you attractive to the one that's the one you want to go after. Because they're going to find a person who is what we call centered, right? Centered would be, you're stacking up all these rocks on top of each other. You guys have seen that, right? These people stack rocks next to rivers, and you just find these amazing, 3 or 4 foot pile of like these little dinky rocks. Sometimes it'll be a big boulder and a little tiny rock and a medium size one. You're like, how the hell did they get those balanced? It's this crazy art people have. That's you stacking up your whole life. Each one of the rocks are different. Each one of the rocks are balanced differently. Well, that's every facet of your being is all stacking up just fine. Because we're going to also talk about when things change, because that's the other non-idealistic situation that we deal with all the time. Look at what the 2020 gave us, right? It took the rocks and went poof and pushed them, right? And then you're like, okay, I stacked the first stack, so I've got the talent to stack another stack. I just don't want to. But okay, here we go. Everybody go someplace else while I do this, right? Don't watch me. So you nail your spouse, your family. You got to have a spouse before you can have family in most cases. Even if you're not married, you got to have someone to procreate with. Now, if you can master that, well, then you've got his or her stack of rocks, which hopefully you're comparing your rocks. You're comparing your, are you lawful good too? Because I'm not going to marry anybody who's, unlawful evil. I'm not going to do it. What drives you in life? Do you want to help people in life? Because I can't marry anybody who doesn't want to help other people. Now, some people can be completely ridiculously, unrealistically devoted to assisting other people to the point they don't have a life of their own. When I moved to the Bay Area, I think, 3 out of 4 women I talked to, when I said, what do you want to do with your life? Here I am, like this super successful engineer and artist and what have you. And they go, I'm going to work for a nonprofit. And I'm looking at them going, okay, you realize the 2 words you're saying is nonprofit. That's what your bank account's going to look like, nonprofit. And every single one of them went through however many years, I think a decade's about the most. And my friends went through that, and they finally realized, I am broke. I am 35 years old. I've got no savings, no retirement, and no future. That's usually how that works. So if you're able to make that work, you are a better person than myself. Again, I had one of the richest people in the world tell me, would you believe me if I told you the best way you can help another faction of people that you think need help is to go get a job, a normal job, make as much money as possible, and then donate it strategically to these people, not through foundations, because they steal 95 cents on the dollar. But if you can get your second harmonic, which is you and your spouse within the family unit, then boy, are you ready for kids. Because each child is going to require a separate harmonic. Each child will be different. So you're going to have to resonate to your child in a different way, learning how to communicate with them. But the funny thing is if you know yourself and you know your spouse, and listen closely, if you know their parents and your parents, then you will have the templates that are most likely going to be your child's personality. And the golden rule, which I have found to be so incredibly true, is there's a hopscotch in personalities. Your child will act like one of your parents or one of her parents, or vice versa, depending on your sex. So you better know your in-laws, because your kid, one of them might be just like you, might be just like your spouse, and the other one will be like one of your parents. So strange. But you're going to have to achieve a harmonic. And the thing is if you take the first 2 things that you had to deal with within yourself in building your character, who do you want to be and what are your themes in life, you can start to program your child to understand those concepts and to think about it. Again, the way that my family on my surname side governed this was to establish honor within the family name. Both sides of my family had it. But one of my family, my mom's side, I didn't get it from them. I got it from the outside world going, oh, wow, you're part of that family? Well, they're very reputable, good people. But it was never said within the family on that side. But on my dad's side, my father was really huge about the Lows do this, the Lows don't do that. We are an honorable, we're paladins, we're warriors for good. So we're strong, but we're also going to use our skills and our energy to make people's lives better. And so I just grew up with that, and that helped me become lawful good, because that's what my family is. Well, then it was just up to me to figure out my themes. And that's all serendipitous, right? You're having a bunch of experiences. Wow, that felt really good. When I helped that old lady take her, groceries out to her car. I tucked her in her front seat and I said, you have a great day. And boy, she just had a smile from ear to ear. That feeling was priceless, that kind of thing, right? I was very fortunate. The only time, I didn't have any opportunities to actually do that exact thing I just told you until I became a stockman at Walmart at like 15 years old. And it was part of the thing. If you had an older man or woman, but usually it was the woman, and she bought a ton of stuff, well, we'd always take it out to her car and get it all loaded up for her. And if they bought a big TV, you definitely have to load it in their truck or whatever for them. And usually 99% of the time, they're so appreciative. It just teaches your soul how to behave, And I realize what I'm about to say next is up for grabs for some of you, but the way I view God is that he's always taking my groceries out with me, helping me out, always. Now, we have bad things that happen, and we tend to lose faith when bad things happen. But in the end, most of us would keep most of the rough ride that we've had in our past because it makes you who you are today. Makes you wiser and stronger, right? So let's go back into the id. Let's go between the mezzanine, between the id and the character, right? There's almost like a conductive layer of electricity between the two. Your id, for me, is sort of your raw resources of what you could be. The whole universe is inside your id. Everything you've ever been, from reincarnation to reincarnation, is inside that id. Plus, the Ethernet cable to God himself is in there, which is why you know right or wrong, whether or not you admit it or not. And it's sort of a burden, isn't it? One thing I always see, I should say in the last probably 20 years, that I have found sort of this paradox of frustration is this notion of, okay, God, I've been definitely taught right or wrong, but I wasn't gifted with the mechanism to completely control myself as a human being. And, part of it has to do with that regimen I've been kind of harping about in recent episodes, which is that, again, Americans, unfortunately, are taught to just rattle off whatever enters your brain, becomes a syllable immediately, right? You just start talking immediately. So it's like there's no buffer inside your brain sort of thing. So that regimen has definitely gotten me in trouble. I'm either trying to tell a joke that isn't funny, or I'm talking to someone about a sensitive subject, and I just happen to think I've got the most colorful metaphor, and what I'm saying is really strange. And I'll give you an example. I dated a woman who was just a wonderful person, but I think I may have said this before, but she had an itty bitty voice, but it was her persona. The little voice was her persona. Because when she came home from work, and I was always there when she came home from work, and she had to get out of her dresses, and she liked to take a quick shower and then get into her casual clothes. She had this beautiful, like her version of a Kathleen Turner voice, just this beautiful adult, sexy voice. It was great. Exactly who I wanted her to be all day long. Now, if the phone rang and she had to pick it up to talk to some associate, a relative, a friend, all of a sudden this little tiny baby voice would come out. And she was sort of a petite person. And I never dated a really small person either. And so it was really tough in intimate situations, I guess, to have a smaller person with this tiny voice, because that's sort of like, it's like Epstein sort of a feeling, right? So her and I were going to, I think, breakfast to a point. This is me just imagine me putting a foot right in my mouth, okay? And I was trying to find a way to bring it up. It's one of those tough subjects. It's sort of like, well, it's not the end of the world. I probably shouldn't have said anything. That's the stupid part about the whole situation. But I said, something like, and you have two voices, right? And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, you got the smaller voice, but then when we're together and you're changing, you have like your normal voice. It's like Michael Jackson had two voices. He did have two voices. And so I don't know how we got around to it, but we're getting out of the car. And I'm trying to make a point of like, I'm cool with that little voice, but I don't want it in the bedroom. I didn't say it that clearly. I said it metaphorically or a roundabout way. And she kind of looked at me and she went, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not a pedophile. And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? It was like way over her head because no one had ever said anything before. I shouldn't have said anything, but I just wanted it to stop. I wanted it to kind of like, because it was a turnoff, massive turnoff for me. And that'll probably be between the two of us. We did it almost a year, and it eventually didn't work out, and for God knows what reason. And, it was just like one of those things. I didn't buffer my mind. I didn't run the conversation through in my head. I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I lacked control. And I totally screwed myself. But on a personal level, no one's here. You're all by yourself. Probably one of the toughest things to do if you're self-employed. I mean, this is one of the hurdles. That if you ever hear anyone say they're self-employed and then you go, okay, do you have any employees? And they say no, but they've got a nice car, they've got a nice house, they got a nice lifestyle. And you're like, whoa. I didn't recognize this when I was younger, but I certainly do as an older person, because that's sort of my lifestyle, is that you have to get yourself up. You have to assign yourself work. You have to go find work. You have to complete the work. No one's there nipping at your toes, man. You want to go on the TV, you got a project due. You want to go and watch TV for 4 hours straight? You could do that. You want to play World of Warcraft because an expansion came out? You could just play a video game all day long. Always telling yourself, well, I'll just work really late tonight. One, you're full of energy during the day and you're tired at night. So that's why you got to be careful with those promises that you're going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. You better have a serious regiment and a serious history of doing those things, like work hard, play hard, which in the video game industry, when I was immersed in that world, that's exactly what we did. We worked hard and we played hard. We had massive deadlines. I'd take my whole team downstairs at EA, go out to the barbecue pit. We had a massive team. And we'd have a whole barbecue for like 3 hours. Everyone's drinking. Half the dudes are going off and hotboxing in their car, coming back with all beady eyes. And I always told them, I said, look, you can do whatever you want, really. One, just don't fall asleep at your desk. And two, just deliver your product on time. If you have a meeting, be on time. Look good. Speak well. Don't be high. Don't have a hangover. And it's unbelievable. I have 55 people. 5 were contractors, but 50 of my own folks. And we had one guy fall asleep at his desk. I told you guys that story. I finally had to let him go, but he went off and created his own company. And that's what God wanted for that guy, let me tell you. But the other one is very appropriate for this time in our life in 2020 especially, which is when chaos happens to you. And then you must maintain sanity. I will say that I am in a sort of privileged position when dealing with this, in that I don't have, 4 kids and a wife that I have to perform around and keep everybody taken care of at this point in my life, right? I'm past that stage. At some point I will get married, but I'm right now, I don't have to deal with this. I have to just deal with myself and deal with my own, ups and downs and concerns about where things are going. It's one thing, and you guys know this more than anybody. When you are awake and global situations occur, you're seeing it for so much more than the average citizen sees it as. They're like, oh my gosh, we just got to stay inside and do this and hand sanitizer and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably the extent of their concerns. Yeah, hope the country starts back up again, blah, blah, blah. When you worry about players in the universe, like a Bill Gates or a Soros or whoever, you're worried about a master plan. You're trying to see the world as one homogenous group of people. Now, let me just give you a piece of advice if you haven't already adopted this regimen of existence. There's an interesting clip of Prince going around that I think he filmed in 1999. And he said, we need to turn off the news. This is 1999, man. 21 years ago. He said, we need to turn off the news because we aren't made to deal with everyone's problems in this world. We can't take on the entire world's suffering. I know friends that try to do it, and you can't, because you have to have your own life too. I mean, what I think that you can play a game inside your mind that goes something like this metaphorically. For those of you that remember 7-digit phone numbers before area code became mandatory with pagers and cell phones, in order to remember your buddy's number, unless you lived in a big city, they just told you 7 digits, an area code, a prefix and a number, right? The reason why they picked 7 was that the phone company had done studies, or at least someone else did studies the phone companies cannibalized, which is that the human mind has 7 very comfortable slots in the mind to remember a number. And that's why they picked 7. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. It's what I was told several times. But inside your mind, depending on, it doesn't even depend. We have a finite number of slots that can hold so much individual agendas. That's a horrible way of saying that. We have slots that can hold a certain volume of agenda in each one of the slots. What would be those agendas? It would be, the self. And maybe you've got 2 things that you're trying to work on with yourself. So you fill up 2 slots. Each individual agenda within the self takes up a separate slot. Then perhaps work has a slot. Then your relationship has a slot. Your kids have a slot. Let's go with 7. But you may have more than 7, or you may have less than 7. You may have one of those slots that requires so much attention that you can't service the other slots, the other agendas in your life. And so you're going to have to measure how overwhelmed you are, and you're going to have what's most important prioritized first, and what is second prioritized second, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'll tell you, one of the fallacies that happens when you're young is that you will say, I'm going to put my family before myself, my spouse before myself, and my kids before myself. Now, in some extreme cases, that is definitely what you want to do. Again, like the old analogy of there's a car coming at your kid and you have the ability to run over there, dive, push your kid out of the way, and you're getting hit by the car. That's where you might want to put yourself first. Save your kid's life, or your spouse, or whatever. But save a life and death situation. I'm going to tell you, the best thing you could do for the people around you that you love is to keep yourself first. Because if you lose your mind, if you lose your sanity in terms of your ability to be patient and happy, you've got nothing to offer anyone else. And so We're taught the opposite for noble reasons, and it's understandable, but you can't do it. You got to keep yourself number one. Now, what we're talking about when it comes to self number one things is you want to keep the most important things that are vital to your like strategic resources. Those things are the things we're talking about. Probably not, in most cases, an elective, meaning like I would never put a cigar between myself and a woman that could be my, ultimate partner. So if she came to me, I met some woman and it's like, she's absolutely perfect for me. She goes, man, I can't stand cigars. I'd be like, ting. Maybe strategically I could smoke them when we have, like you go visit your mom or, whatever, you're gone for a day. I might go smoke with my buddies, but I would never put some low priority thing like this between myself and a perfect partner or the attempt to create a perfect partnership. What I'm talking about is you're having anxiety, for instance, let's just say. All right, well, let's put that as number one because you can't afford to have anxiety. You just can't. So we have to put that in there and you give yourself time and really find a time and a place, whether it be in your car, in the shower, or you just drive to the beach and chill out. And, maybe being with your spouse, being with your kids, being with your buddy is the way that you get through your anxiety, but you better be talking about the anxiety and not just hanging out. Because let's say you have anxiety issues. I've dated one person with massive anxiety issues, just have panic attacks. And I could always calm her down, but that wasn't solving the problem. What needed to occur was for her to be sentient enough to dig within her own soul to find out what is freaking you out, because there's a fire down there somewhere that's out of control. So we got to find the fire and put it out. And that's real important. So obviously you want to always temper it so that you create some clarity so that person can search for it. So you do whatever you can to calm them down, but then it's like the next step is to talk about it until you get it worked out. At least a thread in the sweater you can pull to figure out, okay, I see, you know what it is. It's that thing with your sister. It's pissing you off. Well, let's figure it out. Maybe we'll have her over for dinner. Maybe make that phone call. Or if she's not going to talk to you, then you have to learn to accept that for now and realize that things change over time. Time heals all. But what if your life's going perfect and the world shuts down? Your form of business cannot open, and therefore you have no income, and you've never been in this situation before, like the entire world's never been in this situation before. Your bills are due. What are you going to do? Well, one, there's a couple ways to look at this. This is sort of like crisis management within yourself, because we're talking about being out of control. But I want to make sure you make distinctions between things that you are responsible for 100% by yourself and things that happen to you, because there's a different way of dealing with them. We'll go back to the self thing in just a bit here. One, if, like this whole pandemic thing, well, you should breathe a sort of sigh of relief that's like, well, everybody's in the same game. Sure, everybody wants their bills paid, like your landlord wants their money, the bank wants their money. But in the end, if you made a phone call and said, look, as soon as they start the world back up again, eventually I'll start up again and you'll get all your cash. What do you want me to do in the meantime? So that should give you a bit of a reprieve that you did nothing wrong. It's just happening to you. It's frustrating, but don't get into the frustration as much. That does you no good. We're only interested in things that make it more digestible, livable, etc., right? Well, the second tier is maybe for that point in time, the bigger agenda that you're more concerned about when things are going well. Maybe you've got enough energy to deal with that as well, and maybe you don't. Nothing wrong. Like Prince said, we're not built to worry about a mass murder in Russia. We're just not. Tornado could go through the Midwest and wipe out a whole town. Maybe that's the information you really don't need right now. You just need to focus on yourself, the survival of yourself. And so part of, things that happen to you, the way I look at life, and boy, I tell you, people who, I've never really had a super near-death experience other than my own foolishness. But I've never been in like a fire. I've never been in those kind of situations. But everybody who has been in a really tumultuous situation, they just think they're lucky stars that they wake up every single day. And there's a reason for that. Because that is truly, when you get involved with huge crises, that's the situation that, most matters to you once you've been through a crisis of that magnitude. We need to learn from those people's experiences, right? Like I just told you, I think I told you guys in an episode, but I told a friend of mine recently too, so I can't remember. Saw a documentary, kid escaped North Korea. A boy laid down his life and laid on the electric fence so he could crawl over the kid's burning body. I mean, wow, what a sacrifice, man. He wasn't sure if the kid died or not. You never saw him again. But the kid escaped to South Korea. When he was in this documentary, again, he said, well, do you love South Korea? Do you love all the music and all the entertainment and stuff? And he's like, well, I really don't care about any of that. And he goes, well, what do you care about? And he goes, I get to eat whenever I want. That's all I want. So he's thanking his lucky stars he's alive and he's not in a concentration camp in North Korea. And 2, he's happy that he can eat. But when's the last time that's all that mattered to you? Is waking up and being able to eat when you want to eat. And that was just euphoric for you. That's all you needed. You need nothing else to happen. Well, that's what happens to you when you go through these huge experiences. So the way I've been looking at life for 20 years is, if my crisis can't kill me, then I'm good, right? The IRS can want whatever they want out of me. And I know how many problems the IRS have all filed up. But if that were to happen, because that's one of the classic things everyone fears, I'll work it out with those guys if I ever got upside down. You lose your job for 6 months and they try to evict you out of your house or whatever. Well, you know what? I'm still alive. I've got tons of friends I can stay with if that really ever happened to me. Okay, and I've done favors for so many people. People are waiting to return favors sometimes, So now, it's going to be probably fairly impossible for me to give you examples that belong to you, if I haven't already. And so let's talk about things in a more mechanical methodology for you to identify something and then, what I always like to call, give yourself a break as you identify something so that you don't stress out about it and you've got the calm soul to deal with it. One of the biggest things that we have in life is that we know certain truths in certain categories of life, but we don't know that is still true in a different category of life. I'll give an example. I don't know if any of you are big bodybuilders, but I'm assuming that very few of you are. So out of however many thousand people who subscribe to the channel, belong to Deep Thoughts Clan, let's say you're a normal human being, or maybe you have a couple pounds on you. Okay. And let's say that you decided you wanted to be a hard body. You just wanted to see what you look like, see what your DNA looks like, all cleaned up, and you make that devotion. Okay. In that category of life, you know that tomorrow you're not going to wake up a super duper hard body, male or female. You're not. It's going to take a while. You have to change your eating habits. You're going to have to exercise, and you're going to continue that regimen until your body looks like whatever your destination goal is. You're probably going to learn how to lift weights and learn how to exercise and learn how to eat right. It's a process, and you cut yourself a blank check immediately from having to wake up being that person, because the body takes time to craft itself. All right. Now, for anything that you find inside your id or your character that you're trying to control, that you realize is your soft spot, let's say you have a short fuse. And because I've had a short fuse in my lifetime, again, in certain categories. And it's tough. It's like when people like kind of lie to you and manipulate you, you're kind of like, I'm had enough. I'm going to let this person have it and let them know that I'm done with this manipulation. Happens in relationships all the time. Your kid will do it to you every once in a while too. It's more kind of tongue in cheek with your kid. But a grown adult should act like a grown adult. It's usually what I think, right? Okay. But for you've got to control your mechanisms in order to have that outward effect towards those other harmonics, right? Okay. Well, the first thing you want to do is say, one, there's a huge victory going on because you just found something. I mean, you're looking for beach glass on the side of the beach, right? Let's say, for those of you who don't know what beach glass is, like probably most of you do, it's when glass breaks in the ocean and then are on the beach and then it gets ground up by sand over 10 years and it just looks like a little jewel when it's wet. It's amazing. I used to live in Ventura on the beach, actually technically Oxnard, and there was just a great beach glass joint. And I started collecting every piece of beach glass that I found, and I finally said brown and green was just everywhere, and it just wasn't that nice looking. But the blue and the red and the white was just like crystals and rubies and diamonds, right? The analogy there is that what I did was I got rid of the common stuff that I was bumping into, and I went after the rare stuff. When you are picking apart an element of your character and trying to resynthesize it, you're going to obviously increase the difficulty for just a really short period of time. For any of you that learned how to drive a car, at first it seems impossible. It's like if you look at a really good drummer and you've never played the drums in your life and you never even conceived of ever trying, but then you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it'd be so fun to do what they do in the pedal and the hi-hat and all the cymbals and all the different control mechanisms, the muffle and play in a certain way. It just seems impossible at first. But then if you talk to a drummer, you go, okay, drummer, I'm going to talk to you. I want you to look at me and we're going to have a conversation. I want you to play a beat. And they'll be like, yeah, what's up, man? They're playing it. And it's like, no big deal. It's all muscle memory. Car driving is a muscle memory. Well, nothing was like that at first. You had to discipline yourself, pick out the regimen of what you were going to do, get rid of the common excuses, which have led to you having maybe not identified this thing in your life that you don't really like enjoying. And that's the other thing, is that you're going to extinguish this thing for all intents and purposes eventually. People that are addicted to eating sugar, it's always the same, right? They always tell you, I just bumped into a friend of mine that said they hadn't had my buddy at the lounge. He said, he's losing a bunch of weight. He used to weigh almost 500 pounds. He's a big dude though. And he goes, look, man, I haven't had a soda for like 4 months. And everybody who tells me that says it was so hard for the first month. I thought I was going to die. And now I don't even crave it at all. You have to cleanse the addiction in your mind, the receptors in your brain, your dopamine triggers in your mind, not to want that sugar reward. Remember, sugar and cocaine and caffeine all have the same patterns in your mind. It's just they're different levels of frequency. With thus addiction, where you have that super addictive feeling, go through those withdrawals, right? It's just kind of funny that, we can watch some documentary on an addict incapable of getting rid of their methamphetamine addiction or cocaine addiction or heroin addiction. And we kind of sit on the sofa and we're like, oh, look at that person, they're having, what's so hard? It's just such a horrible thing. Why would you have a problem with that? And then we go get a soda and sit back down at the sofa. We get a pint of ice cream and we sit down at the sofa. We have the same exact problems they do. It just doesn't make us look as crazy in public. It just makes us look potentially not so healthy. I want to give you a category of the id, of the character, that is indicative of a lot of these areas where we don't always know in this category that something's occurring. And sometimes we totally know what's happening. And the key word is denial. A lot of folks have, I think we all do. Let me not exclude myself from this. We have denial about bad habits that we have. part of it is that we perceive succeeding sometimes as a negative. Exercise is always perceived initially, if you haven't been in the gym either ever or in several years, and somebody says, man, remember when you were in high school, you looked like, He-Man? We had this dude in my high school that literally looked like He-Man. He looked like him in the face and he looked like him in the body. And he was the nicest guy in the world. He's still the nicest guy in the world. But today, he doesn't look anything like that anymore. He's really big, super sweet guy. And when I first saw him after, 20 years had passed, and I was shocked. I was like, that's him? Like, that dude was like literally Arnold Schwarzenegger's son. But I think he had literally more definition than Schwarzenegger, and no steroids of any kind, but he was massive. And he used to wake up every day and lift weights and all this other stuff. And he was just famous in school. He was very handsome and he was just a super sweet guy. So anyway, I know that if that dude would ever go back into the gym, oh my God, it would be tumultuous and painful. And, who knows if he could do it at our age, but this is where we need to employ a little mechanism that Tony Robbins learned and then shares with us, which is the thing I've repeated several times, but it's very key. And if you know this little secret, it's a secret that's almost like cheating, but you're not cheating at all. You're playing a trick on your mind, and a very good trick on your mind, a very healthy trick on your mind, which is he was taught that the biggest problem with making a change in your life of any kind, a big one or a small one, is that you have to dramatize in your mind where were your life, if you have something that you're not supposed to be doing, okay? No matter how tiny it is or how big it is, how acidic it is or how benign it might be, if you just play it forward 5 years, 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years, and you say, okay, if I keep doing this, let's say it's eating. Very simple one. If you eat too much, what's going to happen? Well, a bunch of bad things happen, especially if you abuse sugar, right? Sugar is an inflammatory. Inflamed organs tend to fail after a while. It takes a long time, but eventually you'll be like, oh God, I have a heart problem. I've got some other problem. Where did that come from? Gee, I don't know. Coke, right? And so you start to see yourself dying 20 years earlier, dying of a painful death, having to carry around a bunch of weight. Ask anyone whose thighs cannot be separated if that's a fun thing, weighing close to 250 or more and trying to wipe your butt. It's seriously a giant challenge. The old joke that guys can't see their junk if they have a big belly, that is very, very real. For you ladies that don't listen to men talk about this kind of stuff, it's extremely real. And it starts to get, if you go over 250, it can get embarrassing. It's a real big problem. And just to drive home how bad it can be, I know personal friends of mine, they got really overweight. And when they would go to the restroom, number 2, at someone else's house, it was sometimes almost impossible for them to clean themselves after what they did. And so they're stuck in the bathroom forever, just trying to find out a way not to, you're not supposed to soil people's towels and stuff. So they're trying to do their best. It's embarrassing. So there could be the 10-year thing if you don't stop. Now, what Tony does is say, okay, now that's column 1 in your ledger. Column 2 is you stop that. You totally stop it. You get control over it. Now, what's the next year look like? Oh, I might actually lose a little weight. 5 years from now? Well, if I lose a little bit of weight and I start seeing muscle definition, I might even have more energy, as a matter of fact, because I won't be going through sugar highs and sugar lows. I might get a lot of energy back like when I was a kid. Remember how we make all those bitchy complaints about, well, when you're a kid, you got lots of energy. When you get older, you don't have any energy. And the little kid's looking at you going, all right, fatso, whatever, finish your birthday cake. All right, so maybe in 5 years, you've gone to a gym. You started walking. In 10 years, whatever age you are, you're the youngest version of that age you've ever seen, or anyone's ever seen. Looking in the mirror is fun again. And because you like looking in the mirror, you feel good about yourself. You have confidence. You don't have ego. You're just feeling really good. Well, everyone else around you is going to be like, that girl, that guy, I love it when they come by because they're just a bright thing. Now you have your haters, whatever. They need to go through this process. It's not going to stop you though. Trust me. So make sure. And again, I'm a big pen and paper guy. As you guys know, if you're chronic watchers, if you're new, I'm just going to tell you, the pen and paper are the most powerful analog mechanisms for your commitment to the universe to do something. Even typing it in your little iPad with the keyboard on the side, it's dog shit. Not worth anything. Pen and paper, write it down. Write it down. In fact, you could do a little pen and paper, seal it in an envelope, commitment to yourself. I suggest keeping it right in your face at all times. Someplace you are, and you need to move it as soon as it stops being visible in your eyesight, right? Because you could put it on the mirror of your bathroom and you start to dial it out. It becomes a blind spot and you need to move it. Put it on the dashboard of your car, put it on your computer, you keep moving it around or rewrite it out. If you achieve it, create a ceremony where you take that piece of paper to a very safe place and you burn it. You're like, I did it. I got rid of that crap, On my left side was stopped and the right side became reality. And as soon as you burn it, you just forge it into reality permanently. It just becomes a permanent piece of you. By burning it, you can't go back. And I'm going to tell you, there's a little trick. I think I mentioned out of context in a previous episode, many hundred episodes ago. In 2009, I woke up in this body of mine and I had gained 25 pounds that I should have never, ever had. At least 20. I think it was damn near. I was almost 190, which I should not weigh. And I didn't even realize I was gaining weight. My buddy, he's a 5-star chef, and I was doing a bunch of promo for him. So he's just feeding me. Instead of paying me, he's just feeding me. And I was eating like a king, let me tell you. Plus, I was rich and I was making a ton of money from a game company. The 2008 thing had happened, but we still had, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. But my buddy takes a picture of me at his restaurant. He built a new bar and I was drinking like Newcastle's. And that was making me extra fat, right? Never been heavy in my entire life, so I didn't even know what it was like. I didn't know how to become heavy. And he takes a picture of me, and I don't even remember him taking it. And he gives it to me, and he goes, I take a picture of you and your girlfriend. I'm going to put it on the front with all the other photographs. And I look at this picture, and I kid you not, I looked at the picture, and I was like, who's that dude? But I was the only guy with long hair in the room, so I was like, oh my God, that's me. And I just couldn't believe it. I guess I wasn't enough of a narcissist with my phone to take pictures of myself. I was utterly shocked, and I was like, I need to get out of this situation. And so again, I wrote myself a little bit of a blank check and said, okay, it's going to take a little while to lose this 20 pounds. Now, what ended up happening was this, and this applies, I think, to almost everything that we change in our lives for the better, let alone for the worse. First 15 pounds, relatively quick to lose. I just will it off, I swear to God. I changed my entire eating habits, I was eating good, healthy food. I was eating a lot of it. So I slimmed down 15 pounds, but I wanted that other 5 pounds off of me. And the other thing too, I noticed too, was all the trigger points of weight gain. So like in the back of my jaw, my lower jaw, where it meets my neck, just under my ear, when that goes flat and I no longer have my jawline, I've gained too much weight and I immediately drop. That's my new thing in the mirror. It's kind of funny. You probably have a different one. Just take a look. But the first 15 were easy, but that last 5 pounds, they always tell you this, but I found an analogy that works really, really well. It's almost like the most formidable speed bump that you have to get the car over. And maybe it's like there's a cliff, I don't know what the deal is, but just you have to slowly get over the speed bump. Because isn't it strange when you're young, you can't put any weight on. And then when you get older, it's like, no problem. You eat like a Tic Tac and you weigh 50 pounds more. It's crazy. what I found was this. Once I crossed over that 5-pound threshold, it was then difficult to go back over it the other way. It wasn't easy putting the weight back on. No, there's a bit of a qualification in there, but I found out that nearly all my problems in life were exactly the same way. When I exercise like crazy and I get really, really buff really fast, that extra little, you want your pecs to look good, or you want to have like some definition in your abs or whatever it is. You want your shoulder muscles to pop. That's the other way around. And then when you get it, it's very easy to stay in that regimen. So whatever problem you're trying to deal with, just realize you might have a feeling of almost like an insurmountable, can't quite accomplish it feeling. It's just expect that to occur. Just imagine like Merlin comes down and tells you this is the truth of the universe, and that guy's 1,000 years old, and he's like, you're going to have a moment when this is going to seem impossible, but that's when you're really, really close to getting it. But what's going to happen is day in and day out, when you're in that impossible feeling, it's just, you don't know how many days of impossible feeling you're going to have, but just keep sticking to your regimen. And then what's going to happen is, just like the roller coaster, at the very, very top before the first drop, it's going to be easy street on the other side. And what I found was that when I started eating better, it was really easy to not drink the soda, eat the ice cream, do anything crazy. And the interesting thing is if you like certain things like that. Now, soda is a little bit hard. I'm just going to obsess on food for 1 second and just metaphorically apply this to anything that you run into in your life. Some things are more, I'm going to use the word ubiquitous again, right? It's everywhere. Coke is everywhere. It's some restaurants, there's a Mexican place I love to go to. I prefer to drink tea. Water, I drink water all the time. So with my meal, I like to drink something different usually. But some of them don't have any alternative to soda. So it's kind of a bummer. So I will do like the one soda. But as I'm taking the sips of the soda, I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling like, oh God, this is not the way I eat. And so those are a little bit more difficult. But like going to Disneyland, eating their ice cream, this, for those of you who have never been, there's this one franchise that's 2 locations, and it's like insane. I mean, it's the best ice cream in the entire planet. And when you get that chance to eat that special thing, it is like 10x the experience. And typically what's interesting is I get enough. Like I don't order a small portion. I order like a normal portion. You can get gigantic ones if you want, but I can't even eat that much. If you do, it's actually not bad. But you'll eat that whole thing, and by the time you're over, you're kind of like, ugh. You get that kind of feeling. I can't eat donuts anymore. I can't do it. When I eat a donut, I taste the grease or whatever the hell they cook those things in. It just, no matter what flavor I get, it all tastes the same. And I feel like I've got toxic oil in my body as soon as I eat a donut. I don't know how it happened. I just trained myself away from them. Now, let's say you're partnered up with somebody. Either you're married or you're living together, or you spend a tremendous amount of time together. And both of you have really good conversations, meaning maybe you watch the show together. Imagine how much easier it will be if you can work together to support each other. You don't need the other person to tell you how to fix your problem, and you don't need to be telling them how to fix their problem. If they ask, obviously that's open. But one of the big things would be to say, okay, I got my list of things, and maybe you share them, especially if it's a hot item between the two of you, and say, well, I'm going to try to be a better man. I'm going to try to be a better woman. And I know I got this weird little issue here. Please have patience with me. I'm going to slip. When I slip, you could make it a game. I mean, I've done this before where there's a funny ass scene in Under the Cherry Moon with Prince. About 2/3 through the movie, he's dancing with, was it Mary? Yeah, Mary. And they've been kind of having this sort of like, this sexual tension between the two of them up to this point in the movie. They treat each other like they hate each other, but they actually are totally in love with each other. And so they're ballroom dancing on this amazing boat in the south of France. And she's like, what do you want? What do you want? You know, and finally she starts calling him names like gigolo and whatever. And I forgot what he called her, but eventually they call each other names like 2 or 3 times. And Prince says, cabbage head, which may not sound very funny right now, but she just looks at him like, what did you say? And so he broke the cycle of the argument with a random thing. And a girl I dated once, she was a huge Prince fan and is to this day. She's very familiar with the movie. And so we sort of made a pact that if we ever got angry at each other, we wouldn't say cabbage head, but we would throw a non sequitur in the middle of the argument. And here's the deal we had to make. And this is difficult at first. You do it a couple times and it really works out. I mean, it becomes an easier thing to do the more you do it. If you're in an argument, you're obviously passionate about the other person seeing your opinion, which is different than their opinion. That's usually how an argument starts, right? So every argument that goes I put it this way. You know an argument has gone too long between two people when you start repeating yourself. At that point, you're at an absolute point of diminishing return. The more you argue after that point, you're just shouting. Okay. What that really means is you need to take a break, right? You need to take a break from this whole thing. And sometimes it could be so hot, you need to go your way and they go their way. I really highly recommend you don't leave each other physically. Like you don't storm out of the house or any of that kind of stuff, because that creates isolation for at least one of you. Like if you go, I'm going to hang out with my buddies and she's stuck at home, you just made her feel like shit. I mean, it's horrible, right? So our pact was to non sequitur, to forfeit resolution at that point. And then in some cases, we just sat down and watched TV, something completely different. But we didn't leave each other's presence. There's something called makeup sex, right? Makeup sex can be, I've had, it's like TMI, but I've had knockdown, drag out, verbal fights with an old girlfriend of mine. We're very good friends to this day. But our solution was to just jump in bed. So it's like, let's get rid of all this tension. And bam, boy, it was like, what were we arguing about? It's all over at the end of the whole, it's just funny. But let's talk about for a split second, you don't have a partner. And you recognizing what I'm saying here, you may even know a list of things that you need to work on. And you feel isolated. You do. And so you're kind of like, God, I'm all by myself. I don't have any support group. Maybe your family is not that kind of close to you. Your friends, they're good buddies, good BFFs, but they're just not deep. Or you don't want to share this particular thing. It's like Paul's thorn in his side and he never acknowledged what it was. Okay. If you ever a private moment, I want you to remain focused that finding the problem was a complete victory. Even if you know that you've known about this problem your whole life, but you've been ignoring it. And you're like, well, it's no revolution. I got this problem. Now I got to deal with it. And I don't want to deal with it. I've obviously dealing with it. If it was easy, I wouldn't have had any problems solving this problem a million years ago. But here's the difference. Just like psychologists tell you, you can't change somebody else. Only they can change themselves. All right. How many times in your life have you had a bad habit that wasn't life or death or anything? It was really incidental. But you simply said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm done with doing that. That doesn't have it in, the pattern in your brain. Remember how I have like an episode on patterns and how we are all pattern-based creatures. And if you manage your patterns well, you live a great life, right? Some people like to keep their patterns the same. Some people like new patterns after a certain amount of time. But your brain, again, if you smoke marijuana and you're like one puff makes you totally high, you do that every single day. And in about 3 months, you need 2 puffs, and then you need 4 puffs or 5 puffs because the brain is getting tired of the pattern. It's not impressed by it anymore. That's why someone You can't abuse acid. If you took acid every day, I would imagine by the 8th day, you're not having any more highs of any substantial amount because your brain's like, yeah, whatever. He's eating that crap again. So you identifying it in the tense that you're going to fix it. And hey, you might fail a couple times, right? You might be like, oh man, I tried that. That didn't work. Hey, that's one off the list. That's a success, right? Go to the next attempt. But the other thing too is don't be bashful about going online nowadays. Oh my God, you can type anything in through the internet and you'll find solutions for it. They may not work for you, but there's more things off the list. But you may want to try some things that you think won't work, and because you might be surprised. I told this story again a few hundred episodes ago. One, I hate having the hiccups. Fucking hate it. If I drink too much, because I don't drink at all, I get the hiccups. I hate it because it just controls you, right? You can't do anything about it. My father taught me when I was young. I don't know where the hell he learned this. He said, all you got to do is stop one hiccup and it goes away. And I almost didn't believe him. But then when you try to stop your hiccups, you can't stop them. And that's why they keep going. But the second you stop the one hiccup, it's over, right? I've had a woman scare me once when I was a little kid. Totally got rid of the hiccups. Scaring works, but you have to learn the rhythm of the human being. And right when they're about to hit it again, you nail them. And then it resets the diaphragm. But I had the hiccups one night really bad. And the funny thing was that my girlfriend at the time thinks this was the funniest thing in the planet. And so she'd laugh and I'd be hiccuping. It was sort of like I love her to death. I was like, I'm finding it kind of funny, but I'm also pissed at myself for drinking too much. Anyway, I look up on the internet, best cure for hiccups. And it was this one methodology of sitting in a chair, just like I'm in now, should have the straightest back that you can find, like an uncomfortable chair. And you basically look straight up, like you're about to swallow a sword at a circus, right? You open your mouth, you just let your whole throat open up. But you also want to get your diaphragm totally stretched out. That's part of the thing. And you just look up, and then they say to blow out in three shots. 1, 2, 3. Blow out the biggest breath you can while holding your head straight up. And I'm like, oh God, I'll try anything, right? And it was a story about people that have hiccuped for years. I mean, decades. They wake up and start hiccuping, right? And they use this technique, and it was the only thing that ever cured it. I sat in a chair. I did exactly what they said, and oh my God, got rid of my hiccup. Did it again, different times. It worked every single time. I was actually at a bar once, and I noticed this dude talking to me had hiccups, and he was just trying to cover it up, you know? And so he was kind of drunk himself, obviously. And so I just did the fatherly thing. And I said, okay, here. Since he didn't have a back on the chair, so I just put my hand on his back and my other hand on his chin. And I lifted him back. And I said, okay, just follow me. And he was like, yeah, anything, man. I said, open your mouth. Now I want you to blow out 3 breaths like this. 1, 2, 3, as big as you can. Wham, wham, wham. Boom, he was cured. And so he was just like, oh, thank you so much. So I have faith in the old internet. It's a pretty resourceful thing. But let me also ask you this. Have you ever run into a situation in your life where you had a problem and you were unaware that anyone else in the world has ever had this problem? It seems like only maybe crazy people have it, defective people have it, blah, blah, blah. And then you maybe use the internet and you look it up and you find out there's tens of thousands of people with the exact affliction that you have, whatever it is, a mental affliction, a physical one, a behavioral one, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you feel a little bit better. You're like, oh my God, at least, and you read cases that are like 10 times worse than yours, right? It's like they have the chronic level 10, you're on like 2, and all of a sudden you feel better. And then it just poof, goes away. You're just like, and you read about how they dealt with it or whatever, and just like, you know what, I'm just not going to care about this anymore, and it's just going to go away. And it goes away. It's a beautiful thing. So rely on that one too. I have a buddy of mine who's in the AA for the rest of his life, you know, and he slips and he drinks every once in a while. And sometimes he tells me, sometimes he just slosh talks me and acts like he's not drinking, which is always strange. Then he'll open up to me like 3 weeks later. Yeah, I slipped the other day. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't notice, Mr. Sloshy. Here's what's interesting. Men aren't supposed to admit this kind of stuff, right? We're totally in control of our destiny. I actually don't know what the female side of this is. Maybe one of you ladies can let me know. But he would just tell me, I got to go back to AA. And he's very serious, you know. And I was like, okay. You know, I've never been in a situation, but I totally support you, man. And I actually one day said, you know, is it possible for me to go with you to your AA meeting? And he said, nope. Well, I said, okay, why? And he just said to me, he goes, you're not allowed in because every single person in that particular room has to get up and say their name and say that they're an alcoholic and you're not a drinker. So you can't go in. He says, there's that other thing that you can go to, which is for the spouses that have to live, you can go in there. And it's like, well, I'm really more interested in what you guys go through, you know, just being a fly on the wall. And he said, no, because you'll be, in everyone else's mind, you'll be one judging everyone else because you're not one. Oh, okay. So they go together to clan together so they can feel that, you know, I'm not the only one in the universe. I can assure you, if you look inside yourself and you find something that you want to control, that you don't think you have enough control over or any control over, you are by far not the first person to deal with that. And even if you solve it, you're joining another big club of people that have actually solved the problem. So know that there's a race sort of metaphor going here. You're at the starting line. You got a bunch of people with you. You all have the same issue. Now, you know, if you run even a 4-mile marathon, you're all going to run differently. You're all going to be exhausted at different levels. Some people won't finish. They're going to have to go back and run it again at a different time. But as soon as you get over that finish line, even if you barf, pee yourself, poop yourself on the run, and you get through that finish line, they're all going to welcome you on the other side. And that's sort of life and the universe saying, you know, you made it. And see, you had what you needed the whole time, Dorothy. It's very interesting. You know, I did a analogy the other day to Wizard of Oz. And I was watching another conspiracy video with a friend of mine. And this dude, I swear to God, watches the show. He just won't admit it. Because I'll make an episode and then within the week, he'll make the same exact episode. Or he'll at least use a big chunk of an episode. We're talking about the most esoteric crap on planet Earth. But I did that the other day and then aired the show. And then 2 days later, the guy's like, oh, it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like now we can see the guy with the levers behind the curtain. And so I was like, oh, either that's been handed out by the universe as an analogy that we're all supposed to be using, or someone's watching the show. I hope you dug that. I hope it's a nice break from all the craziness going on right now. I would normally say, oh, you know, share the things that you've gone through, but it's probably too private to do so. If you think you have any additional advice for folks, please throw it in the comments. You know, we're in this together. When you're happy, we're happy, you know? And I think that the more that we win as people, the whole planet changes, you know? Just think about it this way. You know that there's a bunch of, you know, uninformed individuals out there swallowing all the pills of what's going on right now. They're still taking the blue pill every single morning. Well, you also know that once the red pill catches on, which is really a super popular medication right now, eventually someone will see you taking the red pill and they'll want one, or they'll ask you about it, and you give them a little bit of information and they're like, oh my God, that felt good. That explains things for the first time ever. Hand those babies out. You know, that's a metaphor for you talking and sharing stuff. You know, if any of these episodes ever help anybody, that you have a friend, and let's say you don't want to be the bad guy. I've known this happening one time. I did an episode about a particular thing that was going to help somebody. They didn't want to tell their friend, this is the exact episode I want you to watch, because it just had aired. And so they waited till the next episode aired, which was about something totally different, but their friend totally dug it. And so they handed out the next video saying, I think you really like this, or the one right before, knowing that they're going to go to the queue to find other videos. And there was a conversation between the two of them, and it was helpful to at least kick off the conversation between the two of them. So if that applies, pass it out. I will say that the censorship algorithm has completely revealed itself. I couldn't believe I didn't see it before. Remember, Q always says the truth is right in front of your face. I was looking at, and I'll put the graphic up there, of the statistics of my viewership. And you can literally see the algorithm of, I post a video, there's obviously a spike in the curve of viewership, and then the spike goes down. You would expect that, right? Looks normal. But here's the problem. Because it's algorithmically censored, these peaks have the same exact angle of attack and the same angle of decay in most cases. But what happens is the bottom of the curve starts at 500 for any one particular video, and it's only allowed to get to 1600, somewhere in there, and then they take it down. So I don't know how they do it. Realize as well, a video could be watched 10,000 times, but they stop the counter every other time, and so it only has 5,000 impressions. So there's a lot of stuff going on. What I would love to have happen, just as an experiment on one particular day, it doesn't have to happen multiple times, but to have some forum, some group of 10,000 people or something, just as a trick to see if the algorithm would change. Get a bunch of people organized on a particular day, pick a video. They don't have to actually watch the thing, but have thousands of people hit a video where I never get over 1600 in any one particular spike on a particular day, and see if we can't cream that baby over 1500 to see what happens. Because if people have test farms, there's a bunch of test software out there that'll test your website. I don't have access to one right now, unfortunately, but if I did, I would take the test software. This is sort of cheating the statistics, but it's only to conduct this test because I don't want any fake impressions. But if I were to take that software and point it at a video URL, right, and have it load and stream, because it's going to be smart enough to stream the video, which is usually just software controlling a computer, right? But it's all virtual in memory, right? But have it hit a video 10,000 times within 24 hours. We know for a fact 10,000 individual impressions happened on this particular page. And then to have YouTube report 1,500, we would know the game that they're playing. But the show is actually crest the 50-year mark on YouTube. What that means is if you total up all the minutes that have been consumed by this show, by people watching the videos, it now totals a person having to sit down for 50 years to accumulate all those minutes. So that's pretty cool. So I really appreciate you guys. I do watch a bunch of other channels, of course, and 99% of the channels within the first 2 seconds, they'll be like, everybody like and subscribe. I think that's extremely cheesy. And so I never push that sort of behavior with you folks. You guys are smart people. If you like it, you're going to subscribe. If you don't like it, you're not. If you want to thumbs it up, you're going to. You guys have been extremely generous. I still get reports all the time that people have been unsubscribed by YouTube. I've even had my own alternate accounts unsubscribed. It's just nuts how they would have the audacity to do that. I mean, it's all linked to my one account. I mean, it'd be dumb to say, oh, maybe he won't notice he's subscribed from his own account. It's like, what? So anyway, if, again, this is anything helpful, please push it around. But on that note, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. There's 2 places to get the video, BitChute being the other one. There's 2 for podcasts, Mac and Windows, Android, iOS. There are 4 social media outlets. We have a great Facebook group. It's getting us some viewership, getting some new subscriptions here recently. I didn't realize it, but one of our administrators, he was just a moderator. I forgot to make him an administrator. So I'll your subscription requests, if you pass it out to a friend, will go a lot faster since the both of us can let people in nowadays. I didn't mean to do that. I just messed up there. But we're also on Twitter, minds.com, gab.com. There are a couple ways to support the page. I realize everybody's financially strapped right now. So to everybody who supports on Patreon, thank you so much. I mean, it's a thought that counts more than anything. So I super duper appreciate it. Definitely pays for sticks. So thank you very much. You do get in the credits forever. You get the episodes before everyone else. And there is a 20% discount coupon for the store. But again, everything monetized right now is, your eyeballs are more important. Let's just get everybody healed up, everybody on the same page in terms of controlling your life, whatever you want to do. And then we'll just conquer the universe together. Season 1 is also on its own channel, just in case you newcomers are like, where the hell is the first 100 videos? It's on its own channel on deepthoughtsradio.com. Just go over there, subscribe. Once you get done watching all the videos you want to see, just unsubscribe. There's no ads over there. All the audio is rebalanced. It's really cool. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.